Okay, good morning. We were in the middle of discussing the dates of the Mishkan, how long it existed for. We saw that the Mishkan in the Midbar was 39 years. We saw the Mishkan in Shiloh, actually we'll see, is 369. And the Mishkan in Gilgal was 7, was 14. The Cheshbon came out was 7 years of capturing Eretz Yisrael, 7 years of dividing Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara knew that 7 years of capturing because of the age of Kalev. Kalev was 40 at the time of when he was a Meraglim. 38 years later, he was 78. They crossed the Yarden and they captured the land. At the time they captured the land, he was 85. 85 minus 78 is 7. So we have a number 7 for the years of Kibush. Chiluk, we said, we get two terutzim. The first one we said was Kibush. Since the Kibush was 7, the Chiluk was 7. I didn't, again, I heard it's a Svarah l'chayra. The second was 14 years b'hukom me'ir. And that I said I didn't prepare, and it's a good thing I didn't because it's a little involved. Okay, let's take a look. You have over here a chart of dates. So you have Yetzias Mitzrayim took place in the year 2448. Okay? The important day we need for this is they came into Eretz Yisrael in the year 2488. 40 years later, they arrive into Knesset Haaretz. How many years until the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed? 3338. So from the time they were in Eretz Yisrael, 2488, if you take 2488 and you take it away from 338, it's going to be 850 years. So 850 years from the time they went in to the time it's destruction. Good? Okay, now we need something about 14. Take a look at Rashi on Kuf Yud Ches on the right side. Rashi on Kuf Yud Ches on the right side. Right? It says Shehuk Sa'ir, 14 years of Huk Sa'ir when the ear was destroyed. It doesn't work out that the pasuk that was in Yecheskel, 14 years after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Hashana shenemar be'esel achodesh ha'yidvar Hashem elai. On the 10th day of the month, the Dvar Hashem was to me. V'tashinu Masech Erchin Ezehi Shana sheRosh Hashanah be'esel achodesh. Which is the year that Rosh Hashanah is on the 10th day? Which is the year that Rosh Hashanah works out on the 10th day? Haviyom Ezeh Yovel. Guys, we count Yovel from Yom Kippur. We count Yom for Yom Kippur. And they only count it now. If you would count Yovel from the time they went into Eretz Yisrael, fellas, you'd have 850 divided by 50, a Yovel year. You'd get 17 exactly. 50 times 17 is 850. Right? 500, then 350. It's what it's. If you would go ahead and put in the 850 years from the time they went into Eretz Yisrael till the destruction, and he says it's 14 years after the destruction, it was a Yovel. Good? Guys, you have to give in? 14 years. Yecheskel has an Nevuah. What?
Kuf Yud Tes or Kuf Yud Ches, the Rashi.
Kuf Yud Ches. Nassim, just listen to the givens. He has a Nevuah 14 years later, and it was Yovel. That's all you have to know. How do you know it was Yovel? Rosh Hashanah was on the 10th. When is Rosh Hashanah on the 10th? It's the first day of Tishrei. It's the Rosh Hashanah of Yovel, so we know the sound from Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the 10th day of Tishrei. So that's the given. So on that day, Cheskel says it was a Yovel, and it was 14 years after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Good? Now, let's figure this out. If they began counting Yovel from the time of 2488 when they came into Eretz Yisrael, right? You get 850 years later, you'll be 14 years short. You'll be 14 years short. Because again, it's a round number, right? 850 into 850 is 17, right? You get 17 Yovelis in that period of time. So we need 14 years later. You know why? They didn't be counting Yovel at when they came into Eretz Yisrael. They began counting Yovel when they captured the land and divided up the land. They counted it 14 years later. 7 years of kivush, 7 years of chiluk. That's how it was 14. That's how Yovel was in the 14th year. It was again. So it's 800. It's the Yovel count is not from the year they came in. It's 17 years later. That's when you're counting Yovel from. You're counting
14
Yovel
years.
from.
14 years later?
8 plus 14.
There you go. Nevuah of Yecheskel was 14 years, 3338, but his Nevuah was 14 years. 338, 14 years later is 52. Got it? Again, if 850 till 3338 is you're short 14 years. His Nevuah was in the year 3352. How do you make this discrepancy? They didn't start counting Yovel from Knesset La'aretz. They began counting Yovel 14 years after they conquered and divided the land. Good? V'heim Yudalit Shana shel kibush v'chiluka. Now, what was our question? How do you know there was 7 years of chiluka? Because of the Nevuah of Yecheskel, it counts for the 14 years. Got it? That's it. It's Dov, you good? Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so that was that it was a very, very long Rashi on both sides, but that's basically the summary of Rashi. Okay, back in the Gemara. We're back in the Gemara. We're by the two dots now on Kuf Yud Ches on the base, 4 lines up. Oyel Moyed Shebenov v'Givoin Chamisha v'Shiva. All right, Minalon. How do you know it was 57? We combined together Nov and Givon to be a total of 57. Dichsiv. And it was, again, this, I'll just reiterate, Shaul brings the message that the Oren had been taken. Remember, I told you this piece of information. Shaul went ahead, he actually took the luchas out, and he comes and tells Eli that the Oren was taken, and that his sons were killed. When he hears his sons was killed, he's battered. When he hears the Oren was taken, Eli falls backwards and dies. That day is the destruction of Shiloh. That's Messiah from the Gemara. It doesn't say it in the Navi itself. That day was the destruction of. Okay, so from that day 369, we're going to count 57 years later. Good. That's what we need. That's the period where the Mishkan goes from Shiloh to Nov. Good. So now, Vayikis Girues Aron Elikim. They mentioned that the Aron was taken. V'tana Kishemeis Eli Akayin Char Shiloh. Okay, so this is the day he died, and that Shiloh was destroyed. Ubal Noiv. Kishemei Shmuel Haramasi, Charvanoiv. When Shmuel died, Nov was destroyed. Ubal Givon. They came to Givon. Uksiv. Vahi Miyom Sheba Aron B'Kiryat Ye'arim. The Aron guys was never in Nov or Givon. It was in Kiryat Ye'arim for 20 years. It was there 20 years in there. Now, V'yirbu Hayamim V'yi'esim Shana. V'yaneu Kol Beis Yisrael Achrei Hashem. Everyone was drawn after Hashem. Now we have 20 years. What occurred in those 20 years? We have a 20-year period. Hani esim shana, esa shana shemalach Shmuel ba'atzmo. Those 20 years, again, the 20 years we're describing from what? From the destruction of Shiloh. So 20 years. We have Shmuel is the king for 10 of those 20 years. V'shana shemalach Shmuel v'Shaul, in a year he served with Shaul. That's 11 out of the 20. Ushnayim shemalach Shaul, 2 Shaul ruled himself, so that's 13. So you left out of 20, 13, you left with 7. The 7 shemalach David, and the 7 years that David was the king in Hebron. Guys, when the Malchus Shaul ended, his son Ishbosheth became king, and it wasn't solidified until 7 years. David ruled first in Hebron before he ascended to be the king of all of Klal Yisrael for 33 years in Yerushalayim. So of the 20 years, we have 10 of Shmuel, 1 of Shmuel and Shaul is 11, 2 Shaul is 13, and we have the other 7 is the years that David ruled in Hebron. Dichsev, Vayom Hashem Malach David al Yisrael Mem Shana, He ruled 40 years in total. Bechevron Molach Zayin Shanim. Bechevron he ruled for 7 years and 33 in Yerushalayim. Ubishlomo Ksiv Vayochel Ibnoisai, and he began to build it. Bishnas Arbol Malchusai. He began to build it in the 4th year of his reign. Nishtayel Shiloi Sholosh Meyos V'Shivim Chosarachas. So you can end up with 369 remaining of those years. So we have a chart over here. Okay. So you have that paper. I give that. Oh, maybe that paper. I have this paper. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So 20. See, it's 20 years. Then what do we need? $369 years. So 28. We have 2871. That's when Eli dies, and that's when Shiloh is destroyed. You now have 11 years after that where Shmuel served as king during Nov. Then you have 2 years with Shaul. Then you have in Chevron, he served for 7 years, and then Kiryat Yearim, 33, 50. So he's just giving you the numbers, but basically it's 20 years in Kiryat Yearim, 33 years of David, 4 years with Shlomo till he builds the Beis Hamikdash, is 57 years from Nov till the Binyan Bayis, from Nov to the Binyan Bayis. And if you do the math going back, 57 plus 369 will get you that number. We'll get you the number. Okay, that's the math.
Send the chart out afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Bez Hashem. Okay, Bolin over Givon. Okay, so Bolin over Givon. They come now to, again, this is this big long Mishnah at the beginning of the parak, and we're going through the history. So they came to Nov and Givon, and bomais were permitted. Kachem Kadashim was eaten inside the Klayim, and Kachem Kalim was eaten in in all of the cities of Yisrael. Minani Mili, how do you know that by bomais after Churban of Shiloh were permitted? How do you know that after that was permitted? You know, it was also all those 369 years, and Punk now you can allow bomais again. How do you know that? Says the Gemara, because as of yet, you have not come yet to the Menucha vel Nachla. Ela Menucha, is there Shiloh? So in other words, you are permitted bomais, Moshe says, because you haven't come to Menucha. Meaning once you get to Menucha, then it won't be permitted. After Menucha, you'll have a period of Heter bomais until you come to Nachla. So we're going to see a machloikas what that means. But Pasha, we've been learning till now, Menucha is Shiloi, Nachla is the Beis Hamikdash. So that's how you know that was permitted if the destruction of what? Of Shiloh, because you didn't come to Nachla yet. El Menucha zu Shiloh, Nachla zu Yerushalayim, Lo Mecholkon, why do you divide them up? K'dei litin heta ben zelazeh, to give a heta of bamais between Shiloh and Binyan Bayis. Shmak. Easy enough. Until. Says Rish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Now this Maisa Sheni Nami listening. They don't list Maisa Sheni by Nov and Givon. They don't list Maisa Sheni by Nov and Givon. So there's 2 ways to learn. Meaning you couldn't eat it, or there's another way you could eat it and it wasn't necessary because they listed it. You could eat it anywhere. In other words, you weren't limited to Nov and Givon. So according to one pshat, this is the way we're going to take it. You were not able to eat Maisa Sheni Kachem Kalim is eaten only in the Yerushalayim. Maisa Sheni is only eaten in Yerushalayim. So when we listed this halacha, we didn't mention anything about Maisa Sheni. So there's 2 ways to learn. Either A, you couldn't eat it, and that's why it wasn't listed, or B, you were limited to Nova Givon. You could have eaten it anywhere, right? So therefore, we didn't list it because it's not limited to that place. We're going to go with the first pshat that you couldn't eat it, okay? Amalei Maisa is not necessary because Sham Aron Koyalfi. You learn it out what from the Aron. Kivin the Aron Lahave, Maisa Nami Lahave. Since there's no Aron in Nova Givon, you couldn't eat what? You couldn't eat Maisa Sheni. The Achilas Maisa Sheni is contingent upon what? The Aron being there. And since the Aron wasn't there, as a matter of fact, a lot of the Rishonim learn that's the tam of the pasuk. The reason why Nova and Givon you couldn't eat there you could have a bum was permitted was because there was no Aron there. In Shiloh, there was the Aron, right? But there was no Aron there. Yeah, Kenny.
Does any Havamina that they went to Kiryas Yearim by the Aron and they ate there? Because you don't need to give it to the Kohen.
Yeah, but I don't. I think you need to have it in the Lefnei Hashem, and I'm not sure this is considered Lefnei Hashem. You would need the Aron in addition to the Mishkan. The Aron alone, let's say just the Aron wherever it is. I hear what you're saying, but I think you would need in addition to that. In other words, the Mishkan without the Aron, but certainly, in other words, the Mishkan needs the Aron. You can't say the Mishkan needs the Aron, but the Aron doesn't need the Mishkan. Right? Yeah, you need you would need the Mishkan for sure. You need a din of Oil Moyed. You need a din of Yerushalayim, and that's created by the presence. Now, in that presence, now it's schwer to say this in a sense because in the second bias fellas there was no Aron, and they ate Ma'aser Shein in Yerushalayim. So again, this has to do with the din of the Mishkan, I think, more so the Mishkan Aron rather than the Beis Eilomim Aron. The Beis Eilomim did not need the Aron. The Mishkan did. You have to make that chilek. Ihachi Pesach v'kachim nami. Pesach kachim also you should not be able to bring. The sham shamei Aron yofi. The kivin the Aron lehavi inu nami lehavi. You wouldn't have the korban Pesach v'kachim. Amalei the amalacha hamani Reb Shimon he. Who is the town of this price? Reb Shimon the Ama av tzibulei krivu el Pesach v'chayvus hakavu l'mzman. Alo chayvus shein kavush l'mzman hachav hachav lekorav. Einachinami. The only thing they brought there in the Bama Gedoyel and Bama Katana, the Bama Gedoyel was Pesach and Chayvus Kavu Zman, but a Chayv that that was not Kaveh Zman. So, we said yesterday a Chayv that's not Kaveh Zman, like Helam Dover, that they would not bring. V'hachal Karev, Ma'aser Behema, okay, and Chayv Shein Lem Zman who. So Maisa Behema, 1 second. Now, Maisa Behema Chayveshen Kavuim Mizman. A Maisa Behema is not Kaveh Zman. There's no kvias to bringing it. So therefore, according to Rav Shimon, you would not bring it on a bama. You wouldn't bring it on a bama. So therefore, we make a hekesh between Maisa Behema to Maisa Sheni. Just like Maisa Behema you didn't bring, so to Maisa Sheni you did not bring. Good. So according to Rav Shimon, who says that, according to Rav Shimon, we saw the Shita of Shimon, that the only thing they brought on the Bama was one that was Kaveh Zman, but it wasn't Kaveh Zman you did not bring in the Bama. The Mela, an example of not Kaveh Zman would be a Bechor, would be Maisa. Maisa Behema is not Kaveh Zman, so you didn't bring a Bama. And therefore, since you didn't bring that Bama, we make a Hekesh to Maisa Sheni. Just like Maisa Behema is not Bama, so to Maisa what? So to the Maisa is not Bama. Okay? Good. Mechlal, the Rabbi Yehuda Karev. Mechlal, the Rabbi Yehuda, they did bring Maisa Behema. The Homer of Adabar Masna, Maisa Sheni or Maisa Behema, Necholim Benoiv Givon, the Rabbi Yehuda. The Maisa Behema, Maisa Sheni. Taka, what are you didn't eating there? Fred Gemara Kashav Aboy Bira. It has to be Lefnei Abayis. Bira's mashman has to be Lefnei Abayis for Lav, and it wasn't. Tani Rabbi Yosef Sholish Biras saying the 3 Biras Shiloi Vinova Givon and Beis Elamim. So Einachinami, whatever Bira means, it was fulfilled in Novin Givon, and therefore, since it was fulfilled in Novin Givon, you could eat your Ma'aser Sheni there. Who Tani Love who Amala Lachilas Ma'aser Sheni Valibad Rabbi Yehuda. What is this? Why are you telling me this din of Bira? That these 3 cases, the nafkamina would be le'inyan Ma'aser Sheni according to Rabbi Yehuda, that since it's considered bira, you will be able to eat it, and because you have the hekesh to what Ma'aser Behema. Mashenken according to Rav Shimon, that you don't have the hekesh to Ma'aser Behema because only at Pesach that's Kaveh Zman or any other oila that's Kaveh Zman, you would not bring Ma'aser Behema. Therefore, you will not eat Ma'aser Sheni. So it's a big machlokes whether Ma'aser Sheni was eaten what in. So again, these were think about it before the Beis Hamikdash. According to what B'Bama Katana, the only thing you can do is you can bring an oila and you can bring an adult and a shlamim. You couldn't bring anything else. You couldn't bring a mincha. A mincha is B'Bama. You couldn't bring a chayv, and not only that, according to the way we paskin, you can't even bring a chayv in the Bama Gedola, in the Mizbeach, in Nov and Givon, you won't be able to bring it. You won't be able to bring it. You won't be able. Maisa Sheni, according to this opinion, you won't be able to eat. According to Rav Shimon, we won't be able to eat Maisa Sheni. So very many halachas nafkamina between when the Bama existed and not. Not simply you can bring a private Mizbeach or you can't. It's good to note. It's a very famous machlokes. This is a Meshech Chochma in the beginning of Vayikra, fellas. This is a very, very nice Meshech Chochma to know. What's the reason for kabbanis? What's the reason for kabbanis? You think about it. When you get to Vayikra, Teres Kahanim, you spend a tremendous amount of time on kabbanis, So the Rambam says something that passed for the Rambam. He says kabbanis was to assuage a taiva for avodah zarah. Hakadosh Baruch Hu knew that Bnei Yisrael would have a desire. It's very hard. You want to have a manifestation of a physical serving of avodah of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. That's the appeal of avodah zarah. And Hakadosh Baruch Hu knew that, and so the Hakadosh Baruch Hu, to go ahead and assuage and mollify this taiva for avodah zarah, went ahead and said, you know what, you could bring kabbanis. The Ramban has a bomb kasha. The Ramban says, Avodah Zarah began b'mei enosh. Avodah Zarah began b'mei enosh. We have Adam being kabbanis, we have Noach being kabbanis. We had people bringing kabbanis. We had Cain v'Hevel bringing kabbanis. And Noach was after enosh. But the other ones, in other words, we had a time before Avodah Zarah existed that they were being kabbanis. So how can you Rambam say that the taiva for Avodah Zarah is the one that brought about this mitzvah of Avodah Zarah? Therefore, the Ramban says that very geschmack. He says a korban is lashon of korav, kuf reish vav, kuf reish vez. Korav, get close. When you want to get close to somebody, you give to somebody. You think about it. You give a present to somebody. It creates a bond between you and him. There's a piece of you and him. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to get close to you. However, the closest possible thing, the most precious thing I have is myself. But you don't let me bring myself. You don't allow for human sacrifice. What's the closest possible thing I can bring? It's something I own, right? A korban has to be from your own. Therefore, it has to be something with a life cycle, similar to a person. I want to be me on this mizbeach, but you don't allow it. So here's my animal who has a life cycle that I want to give to you. I can't afford that. Well, wheat also, barley also. These also have a life cycle. They also reproduce, and I'd like to give that to you. Or birds, I want to give that to you. So that's the reason, according to the Ramban, is a lashon of to get close to Hashem. Says Ramei Simcha in the Meshech Chochma Gevaldik, and this is very good for by Bama guys. When Bnei Yisrael have a central meeting place, Shloisha Regom, they go up to Yerushalayim, they witness Nisim Neflois, they see the Shulchan, the Lechem Aponim is hot from week to week. They see Mamish, that the fire from Shemayim coming down, taking out Kabbanis, all the things that were occurring in the Beis HaMikdash. It wasn't necessary to have a Bama. The time of the Zorah would have been assuaged in the Beis HaMikdash itself. What about the time when there wasn't Beis HaMikdash, where there wasn't a Shiloh? What about the time when there was a poor man's Nov Givon or Gilgal, and people are not coming en masse to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu because the Shechina wasn't manifested there? Then says Meir Simcha, that's the time of the Rambam. Then when you're away and you're distant and you don't have the central meeting place where the Avodah Zarah passing and get you, then that's why Bama Getana. So it comes out, he makes a pshara between the Rambam and the Ramban. He says, when's the Ramban's reason? That's the Ramban's reason is when the Beis HaMikdash is standing. When the Beis HaMikdash is not standing, then the Talmud says the Rambam. That's why Bama Katanas were permitted, because then and only then you'll be able to go ahead and bring Kabbanis to assuage that type for the Zarah. It's a beautiful Meshech Chochma. I know, I think the word beautiful and Meshech Chochma always go together, You can interchange the word beautiful, classic to beautiful, classic Meshech Chochma, epic Meshech Chochma. They're all. It's hard to believe guys, this is going to be his 100th yard site next. This coming Daled Elul is going to be the 100th yard side of Meshech Chochmah. The great Meister of the Meshech Chochmah. In 1917, there was the war was going through, World War One was going through Dvinsk, and they heard that he had been killed. It got back that Meshech Chochmah had been killed. And they had posthumously, they had a levaya for him. Unfortunately for them, he was alive. And afterwards, he read the Hespedim, and he said, Et hakak say it good. Kenny, you got that? I think that's great. He said, yeah, Taka said good.
Isn't he the one that said the rumors of my death are greatly exaggerated?
It could be. I'm sure they stole it from him. I'm sure they stole it from him. But it's going to be his 100th yard site. And I was zeichet to by his keva. I was zeichet to on his yard site 16 years ago. I was zeichet to say kaddish by his keva, thanks to Eliezer Shiner. So saying gesund. Okay. Anyway, so it's great Meshech Chochmah to explain the Bamis and the Svaras Vadav. Oh, Shimon, I see you also there. Yeah. Anyway, Boy Yerushalayim. When they came to Yerushalayim, so then at this point in time, no more Bamis, right? Bamis became Asa, and that was the Nachla. So we had Menucha being what? Menucha being Shiloh, and Nachla, that's being what? That's being the Beis Hamikdash. Tan Rabbanan. Kilei basam ata el menucha v'al nachla. Menucha is Shiloh, nachla is Yerushalayim. That's the Tanakama. That's the way we've been learning. That's the way we've been learning. Menucha is Shiloh and nachla is Yerushalayim. V'oimer, another raya that nachla means Yerushalayim. Hoysali nachlosi ka'aryeh biyar, like a lion in the forest, lashon nachlosi. V'oimer ha'ayit sevuya, a colorful bird. Nachlosi li. Ha'ayit savav alecha. The ayat goes around it. The bottom line is, you say Yerushalayim is called Nachlosi, it's called Nachla. So he's being Uriah that it's called Nachla. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. These are words of Rabbi Yehuda. So says Rabbi Yehuda, that in fact is, says Rabbi Yehuda, that in fact is what is the way we learn. Menucha is Shiloh and Nachla is Yerushalayim. Those are the words of Rabbi Shimon Aimed, the opposite. Menucha is Yerushalayim, Nachla Shiloh. That's the opposite. V'oimer, what's his raya that menucha what is Yerushalayim? He says zu menuchasi adei ad po eshev ki v'siha v'oimer ki b'bocha Hashem b'tzion ivei l'moishav loy. So we see that what that Tzion is and the lashon of Eva of that pasuk in Tehillim that David's referring to a place called Menuchasi. So Tzion, which is Yerushalayim, is Menuchasi. So says Reb Shimon, Menucha is not Shiloh. Menucha is Yerushalayim. Bishleim manem menucha zu Shiloh. Hainu dechsev ela menucha ela nachla. You put menucha first, and then nachla afterwards, because that's the order that they were in. First, you came to menucha to Shiloh, and afterwards you came to Yerushalayim. Elaman de'ama menucha zu Yerushalayim. Lotaman de'ama, that's the opposite. Menucha zu Yerushalayim. Nachla zu Shiloh. Ela nachla menucha mi boile. Then the pasuk should have been rearranged the order. You should have mentioned first Nachla, and then Menucha. Hachikama, like Loimi boy Menucha, the Loimi mitase, right? You don't need Menucha that you haven't reached that time yet. Alafilu and Nachla nami Loimi tase. Even to, in other words, you could eat, guys. You could eat on a bama. You know why? You haven't reached, you can eat a bama because you haven't reached Yerushalayim, you haven't even reached Shiloh. In other words, therefore what? You can eat on a bama. Not only have you reached the largest one, but even the less of an amount. Like the Shiloh, which is less than Yerushalayim, you haven't reached yet. Okay, that's the way Rabbi Yehuda would learn in order to answer up, order to Rabbi Shimon. So that's what Rabbi Shimon would answer up in order to explain the order. So again, according to Rabbi Shimon, according to Rabbi Yehuda or the Mishnah, Menucha is Shiloh and Nachla is Yerushalayim. According to Rabbi Shimon, it's the opposite. Menucha is Yerushalayim and Nachla is Shiloh. Now we have another shita. Tanad Rabbi Shmuel, they learned in the yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel, Zu v'zu Shiloh. They're both Shiloh. Rabbi Shimon Yochai Yomer, Zu v'zu Yerushalayim. They're both Yerushalayim. So Bishleim L'Madiyama Menucha Zu Shiloi Nachla Zu Yerushalayim. Bishleim Mama who says Nachla is Shiloi and Menucha is Yerushalayim. That's the Tan Reb Shimon. Inami Yifcha the opposite. That's Reb Yehuda. Hainu Dechsev El Menucha El Nachla. You said it separately. El Madiyama Zu Zu Shiloi or Zu Zu Yerushalayim. According to Tan Reb Yishmael and according to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, that you're both telling me that they're both the same, right? So menucha nachla mi boy, Yerushalayim menucha nachla mi boy, right? Go ahead and not say el, just say menucha nachla. Kilei ba el menucha nachla. When it says menucha and el nachla is mashma, it's like two different places. But you just said menucha. You have missed a makam of menucha. So kasha, shver. Bishleim Madiyama Zubazu Shila Menucha. Bishleim Madiyama that Shila is Menucha. Why did they get rest from Mikibush? They got rest from Kibush. Nachla, the Palgi and Nachla, why is they divided it up? So I could see that that's the period of guys Menucha Benachla. It makes sense that by Shiloh, right before Shiloh, what did you do? You had Menucha from the 7 years of war. And Nachla, you had the division of the Nachla after acquiring the land. D'chsev vayicholik alem Yeshua, vayipo lehem goyrol, v'shiloi al pi Hashem. Al Madiyam azu v'Yushalayim. Madiyam says Menucha Yushalayim. Bishleim Nachla Soilamis. Very good. Nachla can mean when it says Nachla before Yushalayim means it's the Ebeda Gesetz. It's the forever place that you're going to be. Al Menucha, my Menucha. Where's the Menucha by Yushalayim? And for the Gemara, Menucha Zarin. It's the menucha of the Aron. Again, the Aron was in Kerich Aron. It wasn't at rest. So menucha d'chsev vayihi k'noyach Aron. It was when the Noach came to rest. Guys, yesterday you saw this, you couldn't believe it. It's the second day you won't be able to believe it. Look at the top Rashi. Vayihi k'noyach Aron. Chafasti v'loim betzasi. Second day in a row in Shas. You tell me, Rashi says, I look for the pasuk and I can't find it. The second time he did it yesterday also. By Shlomo Kumam Shelakim Lenuchacha Atav Oren Uzecha. Okay, so therefore you have menucha. So again, according to Madiyama, that Yushalayim refers to what? That menucha Nachla refers to Shiloh. It's Geshmak. Menucha from 7 years war. Nachla dividing up what you conquered. According to the Madiyama, that's Zuva Yushalayim. So Bishleim and Nachla is Nachla Elamis. What's Menucha? Menucha is Aron. The Aron's finally coming to rest. Bishleim Madiyama Zuzu Shalayim Ava Shiloihu Havishaya Bamais. But Bishleim Madiyama Zuzu Shalayim, but by Shiloi that was repeated. Guys, comes out. Guys, you hear this? We've been learning all along like this. We've been learning Nachla Shiloh, and therefore Bamas Va'asa. If you learn that Nachla and Menucha Yerushalayim, then Gilgal was mutter, and Shiloh was also mutter bamis. You don't have it. You don't have an issa. If you're going to tell me Menucha and Nachla says, in other words, you could bring bamis, het the bamis until Menucha and Nachla. So if Menucha and Nachla is Yerushalayim, then Shiloh would have been permitted bamis because you don't have a makam natu. Guys, you here? Again, one more time, fellas. The pasuk is saying. Moshe is telling Klal Yisrael, don't do now what you did in the midbar. In the midbar, bamas were asa, but now bamas are permitted. And then we went through exactly what you could bring in the bama. Now, that was predicated upon the following: you can bring bamas because we haven't come to the makam of menucha, meaning we haven't come to Shiloh. Come to Shiloh, you're out. We haven't come to Nachla, Yerushalayim, you're out. What about the following? Bamas were permitted because you haven't come to Menucha, Yerushalayim. You haven't come to Nachla, Yerushalayim. Mela, what can you infer? That in Shiloh, the 369, it was permitted. You don't have a pasuk telling me not. You don't have a pasuk telling me not. The pasuk that tells me not is you touch Menucha as Shiloh. But if you touch Menucha as Yerushalayim, there's no pasuk to tell me Shiloh that Bamas were not permitted. That's what the Gemara is telling you now, right? That's what the Gemara is saying right now. Says the Gemara. Bishlei Madiyam Azuzu Shalayim, Abel Shiloh Havishaya Bamis, Bamis were permitted, Hainu Dichsiv, Vayikach Menoach Eskedei Izim. This is again Menoach, the father of Shimshon, and they had this tremendous. His wife had Slalaponi was met a Malach and told him, and they bring on a bama. Vayimenoach Eskedei Izim. Vesam Mincha Vayal Al Tzur LaHashem. Right? We can understand there's a het the bamis. Again, this is Mishkan Shiloh. So bamis were permitted. Elamad Yamazuv Shiloh Ubamis Havia Asirin Asiradu. My Vayikach Menayach. I asked this kasha to you guys when we did the sugya the first time, and I told you this answer. Harasha, it was a rasha. Again, all he wanted to do is his wife told him, "Listen, I'm gonna get pregnant, and I'm gonna have a child, and this child is gonna be from the whole time I'm pregnant. I can't drink any wine or any grapes or anything, and this child will never, forever, ever be. He'll be a nazir. He won't be able to cut his hair. He won't drink wine. But you know what? He can kill people. I mean, he'll be Kiyum Mason according to one opinion. So in other words, and Manoach had trouble believing that, so he asked the Malach to come back. So the whole thing was a harasha. So that would make sense. If you hold that it was Shiloh, right, and bamas were permitted, very good. But if you hold that bamas were not permitted, then how in the world can you do it? Because harasha was a harasha. Tan Rabbi Yishmael. The Yeshiva Rabbi Yishmael learned the following: Ki Rabbi Yishmael by Yochai, Damar Zuv Yerushalayim. They were Yerushalayim. Now, what's happening is that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai said Zuv Yerushalayim, and the Tanna Rabbi Yishmael they said Shiloh. So you had the Rabbim, the Yeshiva Rabbi Yishmael saying Shiloh. You have Shimon Bar Yochai saying Yerushalayim. So the two, the debate, they went after the one. So the Gemara gives a simon. The simanecha is Mashchi Gavra. The Gavra Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was Mashach leGavrei. He was mashach to what? He was mashach to he pulled the Rabbim. Again, the Rabbim said Shiloh. He said Yerushalayim. He pulled them who said Shiloh to Yerushalayim. He, the singular person of Shimon Bar Yochai, pulled over. Now, there's a real anomaly over here. I don't know if you can see it. You see, this is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the bottom. You see Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, yeah, on the bottom, and he says what? Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim. Who's this? Is that Rabbi Shimon? You see Rabbi Shimon there? Yeah. Look at the little guy over here. This is Rabbi Shimon, right? What does he say? You seem to have a steer in Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon seems to say Yerushalayim Shiloh. And then he says Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim. Stam Shimon, guys, of Shimon Bar Yochai. You hear? You have a stira in the Bryce itself, right? You have a stira in the Bryce itself. Over here we have Shimon Bar Yochai saying Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, and over here we have Shimon over here saying. It seems the Satmarov said there's a difference when it's of Shimon Stam and of Shimon Bar Yochai. Rav Shimon Stam is before he hid in the cave. And then after hiding in the cave, it came out, and there was Shimon Bar Yochai. That would answer steer. Yeah, in other words, the two Rav Shimons. There's a Shimon Farda. I don't say cave in Yiddish. I won't even begin to the krug. Anyway, he before the cave and after the cave. So that would be the chiluk. Okay, weiter. So the Mishnah said kol kochim that you magdish b'shas isa b'amos, and right you well we really have to go. We should go back. That's the right thing to do. It's a long way back. Kuf Yud Beis, Amid Beis, Kuf Yud Beis, Amid Beis. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. About 14 lines up from the bottom. Kol HaKochim She'ekdishim B'shas Isa Abamis. All kochim that you magdish when bamis were asa. Let's say you magdish it during Shiloh. V'krivim b'shas issa abamos, and you'll makriv it during Shiloh. Mibechutz, hari elu ba'asei v'lo yisasei v'chayim kares. You'll be over an asei of the asei of being into the base of Shiloh. V'lo yisasei, you shouldn't do like you do now, right? That was of Shimon. You shouldn't do like you do now, bring it anywhere. Right? And chayiv kares. Hekdeshim b'shas heter abamos, you will magdish when bamas were permitted. V'krevim b'shas issa habamas, and then you will makriv b'shas issa habamas b'chutz. So again, when you will magdish it, it was mutter to bring out, and then you didn't get a chance to do it until there was isser. So hari elu b'asei v'lo sasei v'in chaydav makaras. You be over in the asei and lo sasei. So guys, issa, meaning issa habamas, and you brought up issa. You get the whole smorgasbord, the asay, the los asay, and karis. If it's heta iser, then you get the asay and the los asay, you do not get karis. Okay? What about the other possibility? Higdishon b'shas isa abamos, v'kriv b'shas heta abamos, ha'ilu asay v'ein behen lo sasay. If you mag the shit b'shas iser, and you brought it b'shas heter, then what? You'll be over on the asay. You'll be able the aim behem lo sasei. Okay, let's see what we got. Let's see our Gemara now. Kol hakochim Rav Kahana lo shanu, that you're not chayiv koris on a korban that you magdish b'shas heta. Guys, remember heta issa is asay lo sasei, right? So all the cases, Karis in all Leishanu that you're not chayiv Karis if you magdish b'shas heter and you bought it b'shas issa, el b'shchita, that's shechnigit. Avul b'hala, the issur of burning it outside, Karis nami mechayiv. So we saw, guys, there were two parshas, the parsha of shchutei chutz and hala b'chutz. We want to suggest, Rav Kahana wants to suggest the din of the Mishnah of Hegdish b'shas heter, and you bought it b'shas iser is only regarding the act of shchita that you won't be chayiv kares. If you maila it, if you bring it up, if you burn it, then you would be chayiv. Despite the fact that you will magdish b'shas heter, you will be chayiv kares. That's what he wants to taina. My taima, the makra, the pasuk says, va'aleim taimar. It says v'nichkrasa va'aleim taimar. Then it says the pasha of halah. Right? So in the parsha, guys, shchutei chutz, v'aleim taimar, kares, and therefore it says shchutei chutz karetz, v'aleim halah, you be chayiv. Maskal Rabba miksev v'aleim, does it say on it? Aleim means two. I'm speaking to the Jews. Aleim, we had this before. Aleim with an aleph is speaking el, two. Aleph is on. So therefore it doesn't say v'aleim with an ayin, it says with an aleph. Aleim ksiv. So therefore, it doesn't make any sense. So, another kasha. Tanya. Abar klolos hayrav Shimon oime b'kachim. He said 4 rules. Here are the 4 rules. Hegdeshim b'shas issa abamas v'shachet v'hela b'shas issa abamas, both shchita v'hala. So guys, issa, and you did shchita hala. Hariheim ba'asei v'lo sasei v'yeshmen karis. Makes there's no heter there, right? You were magdashit b'shas issa. You brought it b'shas issa, either al yedei shchita or the hala. You can be over and asei lo sasei chayiv karis. Hekdeshim b'shas heter abamis, v'shachat v'hala b'shas issa abamis, harihim b'asei v'lo sasei v'emen karis. Guys, there's the upshlag of Rav Kahana right there. Guys, there's the upshlag of Rav Kahana. What would you say? You were magdish b'shas heter, and you shechted or hala b'shas iser. Still, it's only an asay v'lo sasei, not chayiv karis. This is a Tana. Rav Kahana can't argue on a Tana. So it's from this segment of this brisa that we're slugging up Rav Kahana, because it says you be chayiv hala, you will be chayiv kares. Hekdeshim b'shas issa abamis v'shachet v'hala b'chutz b'shas heter abamis harhim b'asei v'ein behem b'lo sasei. So you were magdish b'shas issa, b'shas heter you were magdish v'hala, then you be chayivat on an asay, and that's it. Hekdeshim b'shas heter habamas v'shachet v'helim b'shas heter habamas patam miklum. Obviously, tiyufta Rav Kahana tiyufta. What's the upshlag of Rav Kahana, guys? Guys, what's the upshlag of Rav Kahana? We said if you go ahead, you magdish b'shas heter, and your Mila, B'Shas Isser, you Asay V'lois Asay, but no Chiyav Kares. Okay, there would be no Chiyav Kares. The Elu B'Kachim. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah on Kufiyat Beis. Let's go back to the Mishnah on Kufiyat Beis. Five lines up. Ve'elu kachim kravim b'mishkan. Kachim shehugdashu l'mishkan. Kabanas tzibur kravim b'mishkan. Kabanas hayachid b'bama. Kabanas hayachid shehugdash l'mishkan. Yakrivu b'mishkan. Yakrivu b'bama pata. Okay. Uma bein bamas yachid l'bamas tzibur is smicha, shchita, and safain. The difference is, what's the difference in bamas yachid and bamas tzibur? In bamas yachid, right, you would not have smicha, you would not have tzafin, you would not tzafin, and matan saviv, v'tnufa, a bunch of halachas. So let's see the Gemara over here. The elu kachim smicha d'chsiv. How do you know there's no smicha bebama ketana l'fnei Hashem b'samach? It says l'fnei Hashem b'samach. So if you in bama ketana, you're not l'fnei Hashem. Shchita b'tzafayin. How do you know there's no shchita b'tzafayin? D'chsiv tzafayna l'fnei Hashem. Matan saviv. How do you know putting it around, daubing it all around? D'chsiv v'zarak al mizbeach saviv, and it's not the mizbeach. Tenufa d'chsiv v'heinav hakoyin l'fnei Hashem. Hagasha d'chsiv v'egisha el hamizbeach. And he says you be magish to what? To the mizbeach. Okay, we'll stop over here.